The first year they were in Kenya, their goal was to find out what the people most needed, as well as the hopes and dreams, so that Village Project Africa could fit those needs. They learned the greatest need and desire was for children and the grandchildren to be educated. In March of 2007, Village Project Africa started a preschool for 50 orphans and vulnerable children. That's grown to over 800 students with classes from preschool to college training for teachers. Village Project Africa has seen incredible success as the top school in the area for the National Primary Exam, and have received national drama and music trophies and awards. And most importantly, they've been instrumental in turning the poor and vulnerable to healthy, empowered children. So thank you, Margaret, for coming from Kenya to visit us today. Our next panelist is David Taylor from Colombia Childcare, founded in 1999. As a Christian-based nonprofit 501c3 with the aim of tackling abject poverty by alleviating the suffering for poor children in Colombia. Founder Reverend David Taylor is an ordained minister, and since 1995 he has worked mainly in Latin America, helping to raise the quality of life for disadvantaged children. David's hope and dream is that many of the children supported by Colombia Childcare will be able to take their rightful place in society and one day make a significant difference in their community. So thank you, David, for coming to Colombia. Dory Sardwani is the Executive Director of Ashkana Fund, Inc. in the U.S., leading the efforts to raise awareness and support for the Ashkana Foundation, Akanksha.
That's okay.
Akanksha Foundation, an award-winning nonprofit in India focused on education of children in low-income communities. Was founded 25 years ago and runs 21 schools and 4 centers, serving 6,000 students. Dory was born in India and currently resides in Bloomfield, New Jersey, with her family and 2 unruly dogs. They're also adorable. And last we have Shin Fujiyama from the Soleada Bilingual School. It serves abandoned street kids and children from a local shantytown. It is located in El Progreso, one of the most dangerous cities in Honduras and really in the world. In a community overrun by a deadly gang called MS-13, the school is giving the students and their families a fighting chance. And I also want to point out that Shin was named a CNN Hero in 2009, and we really appreciate you being here today, so thank you so much. So I just wanted to start with one question that's probably on everyone's mind here. There are a lot of causes to support. But I want to know, Margaret, I'm going to start with you, why education is important to you and why you've made that a mission for you.
When I went to Kenya in 2006, we didn't really have a dream of starting a school, but we went from home to home and asked the villagers, what are your hopes and dreams? And what could we do to help you if we could help out? And over what we heard is, please help us educate our children. The women and the caregivers could not read or write. They could not write their names. When it came time for a legal document, they had to put their thumb down. And so their dream was that their children would be able to read and write. And so after we heard this for many months, we decided to start a preschool. So we started that preschool in a mud building. And I'd tell y'all, for 4 years I lived in a mud house. I know that Shin lives in a tree house, and I'm pretty impressed. But we started that school. We had 50 children come, and we had one small room, which y'all are standing pretty close here, so I guess it wouldn't be a problem. But for me, my grandchildren were in fancy schools here in the U.S., and 10 or 12 children in a room, and I said 50 in a room is too many. Let's see if we can build another room. So we built the second room, 50 more children came, and then 50 more. We had 150 children in 3 rooms. But as we grew, as children got sponsored, we were able to build a permanent school, and our quality of education went up, and that's what the sponsorships helped for, I will tell you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. David, I want to ask you, David, I want to ask you, how has Brighter Children supported you and impacted Colombia Childcare?
Well, I got involved with Kunal about 3 years ago. He searched me out on the website and found out that I was doing some work in Colombia. So we would already had, quite a few sponsors at that time. We started a school in 1999. So I've been in Colombia 18 years and Latin America 22 years altogether. But Brighter Children, of course, have been very important to us. I believe that you can do more corporately than you can do individually. So they've added to everything that we've done. They support 75 children in the Oasis Walk School. And it's just great to be in partnership with people who really care about education, because I really care about education. I started off life the youngest of 11 children in the north of England, and my dad couldn't read and write. I left school at 15, became a deep sea fisherman, and lived a pretty checkered life up to the age 39. And then my life changed round, and I began to understand the importance of education. I went to university in England. I studied applied social sciences, sociology, psychology. And when I went out to Latin America, because I'd had a dream whilst I was at university about Colombia, so I ended up in Colombia in 1999. I went to Costa Rica before that to learn Spanish, and then I was 2 years in Guatemala. But I had this desire to see these kids who basically lived on dirt floors, had little in the way of sanitation, had no hope in their lives, that parents were very apathetic against what we were trying to do. So I found this big piece of land, and I bought that land with my own money. That's my own investment. That's the legacy that I'll leave behind when I leave planet Earth. And we're seeing students now who go all the way from preschool all the way to 12th grade, and our students are now graduating from our school, going on to university, are getting degrees in things like environmental engineering, architecture, you name it. And the culmination of my dream is that some of those students are now back in our school working on staff. So education, Nelson Mandela said that education is like gold dust to children from the third world, or underprivileged children in the third world, and I truly believe that. So thank you, Brighter Children, for partnering with us, because we really truly value that partnership. And the Brighter Children team came over to us, and they did an awesome job. All our young lady students wanted to be photographed with Taylor Marsh. Everyone had a photograph with him, so Brighter Children were a big success when they came out to Colombia.
Could you tell us a little bit about the communities that you work in India? I'd love to know a little bit about those communities and what they look like and the students.
So I'm honored to be in this town. I feel like I could actually hear the three of them talk all day. Like, I'm so inspired. I want to go to Colombia and Kenya and Honduras and work for you all. So Akanksha runs 21 schools in Bombay and Pune. And the schools are in partnership with the government, and we work specifically in communities that are low economic, disadvantaged communities, so which are of no short demand in India, as anyone can imagine. But the communities that we serve in particular face a lot of issues that many of us here don't even think about, but they do exist, in our midst here too. So in addition to being able to provide the children, the 7,000 children we serve, with a quality education, they come into a classroom, and sometimes we're dealing with issues of sexual violence at home, domestic abuse. There is a lot of alcoholism that these kids have as part of their life. There are sometimes illnesses that are either diagnosed or not diagnosed. A lot of times the sheer economic pressure of the family also, weighs heavily on these children. Most of our families live in shanty towns right around the school. And so the space between the four of us and the rest of you right here, and this little corner here, would be a house for a family of six sometimes 7 people. And it is both the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, the playroom. And I think those of us that have been in, this is not surprising to us, but I think there's something very powerful about seeing it and then seeing the children in the school where they're ready and eager to learn, and to some degree it makes you so appreciative of the fact that they can even be there and be present. The one thing I feel like Akanksha does, and it seems to me that we all do through our work, is that school is not an isolated, nor is education an isolated incident in your life. And so our approach to education is a holistic education to engage the community, right? So every one of our schools actually has a social worker, and that social worker does nothing but engage with the parents, engage with the community, and identify ways in which the students and the parents can actually empower the community outside of the school. And I think that to some degree really enables us to be successful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Shin, I want to talk to you a little bit about the community that you've helped to build. And I just want to hear a little bit about your story of how the school came to be and kind of the ripple effect that the school has had.
Sure. We work in a conflict zone. Honduras, for the longest time, was known as the homicide capital. In the neighborhood that we work in, the gangs outnumber the doctors, lawyers, and engineers. I run a soccer program there. I'm a soccer coach, and we have about 30 guys in the team. Recently, rival gang members came in, and they broke into the house of our centerfold back, Jackson. They came in with machetes, hacked him to death. A little bit afterwards, our right winger, Orejas, they followed him home, shot him in the back of the head multiple times, killed him. Afterwards, our center forward, they took him away into the palm jungles right behind our school. They tied him up, they gouged his eyes out, cut his fingers off, and then shot him and dumped him in the river right behind where we work. So essentially, I've lost 10% of my soccer team to violence. That's the kind of situation that we're living in. Luckily, we have the Honduran army protecting our school at all times. That's the reality that we live in. That's the reality that our students have to live in. But tonight, I wanted to share you guys one story of one girl who goes to our school. She's one of the 60 students that Brighter Children is sponsoring. So her name is Daniela. She's a 7th grade student at our school. She's one of our top students, and recently she was invited to compete in the Spelling Bee Championship of the city. So our school is a bilingual school. Our kids are learning English, which is their second language after Spanish. She was really excited, so she studied very hard. She stayed back every day after school from 2:30 to 4 o'clock, getting extra tutoring from her teacher, Miss Caroline. There were a lot of words that she had a hard time learning, like egg yolk. And she thought it was Y-O-U-K. Sometimes I get that wrong too. She kept studying really hard, and on the day of the competition, she woke up early. She had her usual breakfast, which is 1 tortilla with crumbs of cheese, and she showed up to the event. She got real nervous because our school, like you guys heard, is for kids who come from the local shanty towns and the orphanages. And she showed up, and the other competitors from the prestigious expensive private schools, and they came in their nice cars and their nice shoes. So Daniela was very nervous. And the judges, they were really tricky, and they asked her words like bacon and then vacant right afterwards to trick her. But she got them all right, and she somehow makes it to the final round. Her rival competitor is from a very prestigious school, and she gets the word compliment, and she gets it wrong. So it's Daniela's turn, she's in the final. They ask her how to spell formless, and she spells it correctly. And on that moment, Daniela became the 6th grade spelling bee champion of the entire city of El Progreso. It's a city of 200,000 people, and nobody would have thought that Daniela, who was the absolute underdog, she grew up in a house made of cardboard and rotting tin. She didn't have electricity growing up. She didn't have potable water, and she did that. Her mother, a single mom who never studied herself, was there crying in tears. So we work in a place where the gangs outnumber the doctors, lawyers, and engineers, but we really believe that in 10 years, with the help of organizations like Brighter Children, if there are 60 Danielas out there, I firmly believe that they're going to flip that ratio and they're going to change Honduras. And on behalf of my whole organization, I want to thank everyone here for supporting the Danielas of Honduras and the world. So thank you so much.
Margaret, I want to talk a little bit about the future. She brought up. What do you see Village, or where do you see Village Project Africa in 10 years?
Well, we now have, our high school is up to, in January we'll start our junior class. And our dream is that in 10 years, those children will have gone to university and they're going to come back and be the leaders in this village, but also in our school. And we already are beginning to see that as we're embarking on a bigger agricultural program, because we're feeding so many children every day. And we have about 6 months a year is complete dry weather, drought. And so we're getting greenhouses, and we're already seeing our high school children getting interested in farming these greenhouses in the surrounding area. We have about 1.5 acres. So I'm already seeing that they're wanting to come back, make a difference. Our children, when we ask them, what do you want to be when you finish school? They'll say, we want to be a teacher and come back and teach at Heritage. Some of our children want to go on and be doctors and other things, but what our dream is, they'll come back and be the ones that are running the school. And I really hope it happens.
I also met one of your students who said he wants to be Kenya's first astronaut. So I'm
Yes.
that's
your guy.
I think Victor.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say about Victor, so Rich Stone is here, I don't know where he is. He got to meet an astronaut during the eclipse here in America, and he sent a picture of the astronaut over to Victor.
So, David, first I want to also congratulate you that your daughter has graduated from Colombia Childcare.
Yeah.
So, and I want to ask you, 10 years from now, your 2 sons are going to graduate. What do you see the future for Colombia Childcare?
Well, Colombia Childcare is growing. There's no doubt about that. You know, the biggest sponsors are from the UK, where I'm from, but here in America we have an office in Orlando, and so my open dream is that we can develop the work more in the US. We've got several projects for 2018. A student recreational zone is one of them, and then we've got a very large piece of land which I've told all the staff, we've got 27 on staff at Oasis just in our one project. We have 7 projects altogether. But the Dream Zone is going to be a sporting complex. I'm a big sports fan. I like Golden State Warriors here in the States, Manchester United in England, so all our kind of students are big on sports. So we're developing, we've got 7 projects, we don't want any more. We want to make the 7 projects that we've got the quality programs that I believe we can make them. So it's just a progression. Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, we started, same as Shin and everyone, we started under a tree. And you know, our first project just feeding some kids under a tree, and it's just all progress from there. So we work with the Wayo Indian tribes in the desert area of Colombia. Wayo Indians are very frugal existence indeed. There's about 400,000 of them. They live in the desert, so we're building wells for them because water is the most important component in the desert. And we're seeing, you know, progress. And Brighter Children, we want to go on and partner more with them. And, you know, so I just see good things happening for the future. You know, I really do. You know, I'm very excited about 2018. And as I say, the thing that's going to break the cycle of poverty in the children's lives is education. You know, Mother Teresa, the nun who was in India, she said that, you know,
I knew her.
You knew her?
No, I'm just saying that because you looked at me.
Oh,
She was from India.
Well, she wasn't from India, but Mother Teresa said she had a
I
statement.
couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Mother Teresa had a statement that impacted me, and she said, "You can't do what I can do, and I can't do what you can do, but together we can make a significant difference to an hurting world." And I advocate what Mother Teresa said. I want to make a significant difference to an hurting world while I'm still on planet Earth. And I want to leave a legacy, behind that's going to outlast my lifetime.
Thank you. Tell us about Mother Teresa. I want to ask you the same question because with Brighter Children we are looking to the future. We want to know the future of Akanksha.
So Mother Teresa was lovely, almost saint-like. Thank you for the compliment. So, I think just to follow up on the education issue, I do want to actually bring it back to Mother Teresa. The one thing that I find really empowering, and I think many of us here, and I think all of you really connect to about, because there are so many causes you can give to, right? You can give to the environment, you can give to, pets issues. I mean, it runs the gamut. The one thing I think that draws many of us to education is that, unlike charity, which was a part of what Mother Teresa did, education actually gives people the tools to not have to ever get any kind of charity, right? And so to some degree, education is that lever that unlocks the potential, not only around rights, but around access and your ability to kind of make something of yourself in your community. And I think there's no surprise to anyone that when you go to a parent, even as a parent myself, like the one thing I want to make sure our kids have is a great education, right? Because it's the one thing I give them that they will always have, except for their names, right? But for Akanksha, the one thing that we have also been looking at is it's not just education. India has over 360 million children in the education system. That is greater than the entire population of the United States. So the problem, of scale is a significant issue in India, and we have 20 schools, right? So there are 1 million schools in India. And so one of the things that we're doing as an organization that is relatively a small fish in a relatively large pond is we're really thinking about our work as a model and thinking about ways in which we can amplify the model and what is working with the model to other schools, right? So we're sharing our curriculum, it's online, it's available for free to any teacher in any school to be able to take from it. We're noting down the best practices so that any school, whether it's a government school, a private school, can adopt it. We have teacher training models. And so I think in 10 years, we want to impact India's education system, not just on the framework of literacy, but actually quality education. I always say that the world's largest democracy, there are 1 billion of us, and apparently we all look the same. I'm just kidding. This is the old sort of British-Indian colonial relationship being played out. I think David and I are both old enough to sort of remember. But one of the things that I feel like that we want to do is we want to be able to have the world, right? And we want that citizenry to be not just followers, but leaders. And that entails being able to think for yourself. And that comes, I think, from a good education.
Thank you so much. I'm over my time right now, so I'm sorry to give you 1 minute, but can you tell me what the school is going to look like 10 years from now?
Sure, like I said, we work in a community where not one person had graduated from high school, 0. We had pretty much 100% illiteracy rate. We hope to reverse that statistic completely within 1 generation. We want the whole community, 100%, to have graduated from school. We believe the village of Villa Soleada could be the most educated village in the whole country of Honduras within 1 generation, thanks to our children.
Want to thank our panel one more time, so thank you guys so much for coming here. A lot of you have traveled